Video games are pretty cinematic nowadays, aren't they? Someone even claimed that there's an attempt to blend movies and games together. While of course there are plenty of games that still focus on the game part, especially in the indie scene, the David Cage Quantic Dream QuickTime event-filled dynasty of glorified movie games are proof of this fact. Alright, I'm just being dramatic. Besides, that's just one company using the classic point-and-click design of gameplay that does have its merits. The common practice that most AAA developers go for is 85% solid, fun gameplay and 15% cinematic cutscenes sprinkled between gameplay segments. Obviously, I just pulled that statistic out of my butt, but the point is, to properly utilize cinematic elements in a game, you kinda have to separate that from the gameplay. That's not to say you can't use cinematic elements in a video game, but it is definitely difficult to do so without sacrificing specific gameplay elements that some may prioritize more than others. Resident Evil's fixed camera angles add a cinematic element to gameplay. All they had to do was sacrifice conventional character movement for tank controls. And you'll find people like myself that love them, but most do not, alienating large audiences from ever wanting to play the game. So keeping cinematic elements and gameplay separate is easier than not, but there are cinematic elements that can be utilized during gameplay that won't interfere with it. Larger-than-life characters, full-on scores, a deep plot that goes beyond rescue the princess from dragon, and an overall style more akin to a big-budget Hollywood film than a shorter arcade experience. Metal Gear Solid succeeds at this well enough, and while the games following after it improve everything Solid 1 tried to do, Solid 1 has such a unique style along with its cinematic type story that I feel like hasn't been replicated even by its sequels. Metal Gear Solid was released in 1998 for the PlayStation 1 and is actually the third game in the Metal Gear series of games. The prior games, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, were released for the Japanese-only MSX computer system. Here in America, we got a version of Metal Gear for the NES that isn't as good as the MSX counterpart, and instead of Metal Gear 2, we got Snake's Revenge. Finally, a Metal Gear us Americans can get behind! The original two Metal Gear games would not be released in the West until Metal Gear Solid 3, but it does not matter in Solid 1's case. Metal Gear 3 would see a switch from the 2D limitations of the MSX to the new possibilities of the PlayStation's 3D technology. Now that Kojima could make his LEGO sets more detailed, the ultimate decision was to disconnect this third entry from the previous two, reuse some similar themes from Metal Gear 2, and any callbacks to the previous two entries would be explained in great detail. This is why Metal Gear 3 dropped the 3 and became Metal Gear Solid, a new starting point in the series, and what the series would take after going forward. And honestly, with how cryptic and dated the first two are, it's no wonder why they would want to make Solid the new entry point in the series. The PlayStation's capabilities compared to what the MSX could do must have not only been jaw-dropping at the time, but for someone like the series creator, Hideo Kojima, it must have been a playground for new ways to present the Metal Gear storylines. Not only could Kojima play with the camera angles and more detailed character designs and animations, but he can make them talk too. Of course, he made characters talk in his previous game, 1994's Police Knots, another Japanese-only endeavor, but that was a sci-fi film noir-inspired point-and-click game. Metal Gear Solid is a stealth action game with sci-fi elements, but is grounded in reality.
Plug your controller into controller port 2.
With a more serious environment, subject matter, and even more movie-like score, Metal Gear Solid is one of the early examples of a cinematic video game experience that finds a good balance between its film-inspired elements and the aspects that make it a fun game. Kojima definitely treats his games like films when it comes to storytelling. Around 4 hours of cutscenes, and this is an 8-hour game, not counting every possible piece of dialogue, hell, not even counting the pre-game briefing that, despite telling you what your mission is, it's completely optional. There is a lot of story here, full of twists, wacky and threatening villains, and high-caliber action. And the briefing, everything you should know before going in, is an additional 20 minutes. For a PS1 game that isn't an RPG, that's a lot. To summarize the basic premise of the game's plot, Solid Snake, 6 years after the events of Metal Gear 2, is living alone in Alaska as a dog musher. He is basically kidnapped and brought to his old commander, Roy Campbell, who, on behalf of the United States government, is asking Snake to partake in a one-man sneaking mission. A nuclear weapons disposal facility on Shadow Moses Island, also located in Alaska, was taken over by a rebellion led by Snake's former unit, Foxhound. They contacted the White House and demanded $1 billion in the remains of the legendary soldier Big Boss. If their demands are not met within 24 hours, they claim to have the ability to launch a nuke, and it is quickly revealed to be possible with the mech known as Metal Gear Rex, a new model of the previously made Metal Gear walking battle tanks. Snake's job is to infiltrate the base and not only find and destroy Metal Gear, but save the two hostages and take out the Foxhound members as well. Another thing to note, the leader of that Foxhound group is Liquid Snake, who Snake is surprised to find looks exactly like he does.
I have a twin?
I don't know the details, but it seems so. That's why we really need you for this mission.
Colonel Campbell does have his own motive of asking this task of Snake. His niece, Meryl Silverberg, is also being held hostage there. Snake begrudgingly agrees and is shipped off to Shadow Moses Island via submarine. What follows is almost a character study of Snake, as literally everybody knows more than he does and are constantly asking him why he is doing what he is doing as more and more about the mission is revealed to him. It truly is a cinematic plot crammed into a video game. Although I think given its scope, Metal Gear Solid's plot works way better in a video game than it ever could in a film. It's captivating and entertaining through and through. And even though I've played this game so many times, every time I play it again, I always have some scene I forgot about or a codec call I had not seen until that playthrough. And this is the type of game where you want to exhaust as much of the dialogue as you can, because the characters are arguably the strongest part of the game. Most of the cast in Metal Gear Solid are iconic to the series, and characters like Solid Snake, Colonel Campbell, and Psycho Mantis are iconic to gaming in general. Not just because of the events that transpire in the game, but the acting behind these characters are top-notch. It's funny too, all of the English voice actors besides Snake and Psycho Mantis' voice actor went by aliases. Apparently because, and this is according to the wiki page, they did not know if the project was supported by the Screen Actors Guild. Regardless, the acting is, in my opinion, perfect, especially David Hayter as Solid Snake for the first time. Fans of the series know what David Hayter's Snake sounds like, but in this game you get a less gruffy version of the voice than what it would become.
I'm the pawn they sent here to save your worthless butt. I've come to escort you back to the other side of the Iron Curtain.
All of the characters in this game are very memorable, and I think that comes from the game's writing and direction. Kojima's writing may be an acquired taste for some,
There's no one I'd rather have in a foxhole than you.
but the characters all feel very real and alive. They speak in military terminology and acronyms. They might be long-winded at times, but nothing being said is simply thrown-away lines. And another aspect is that some of the shit these guys say is so wacky, but the delivery is so serious and not played for laughs in the slightest that you find yourself taking it seriously because of how much fun these scenes can be. So you'll get crazy lines like,
It's like one of my Japanese animes.
You've got a great butt.
The Super Baby Method.
Super baby method.
and if this was made today, someone would wink at the camera, roll their eyes, but not here, and it makes it that much more enjoyable. It also helps with the immersion. Instead of using the common practice of using pre-rendered cutscenes, the act of rendering out a video file with nicer looking models and having that play during gameplay, they instead had all the cutscenes be performed in-game with the same models. It may not look pretty, but it makes it so there's no visual distinction between gameplay and cutscenes, which makes the two blend together more smoothly. Not only that, but just the little subtle details about the game add to the presentation of the cutscenes and gameplay. The echo in their voices whenever they talk, their breath being visible because of how cold it is, the color palette being blue and green colored early on until later when it shifts to red to be more intense and climactic. Now, not every cutscene or dialogue is the same in the game. Most of the time, you'll be taken to the codec screen for radio contact between Snake and his support team or others within the base. Given that it's a different form of contact, it makes sense why there is a different visual for this. And this screen is fine enough for what it is and has become iconic in its own right. Getting a more detailed look at each character's face is nice too, because you're not really going to get that from these models, let me tell you.
I hardly ever look at myself in the mirror.
I mean, I like them. I always found the blocky PlayStation 1 aesthetic charming, but I guess it's dated. Other than that, you'll occasionally get some B-roll footage during the cutscenes when it's relevant. It's normally real-life footage too, and it adds kind of this creep factor to it. I say that because this game has a big anti-nuke message because, hey man, nukes is scary. And the live-action footage is usually with someone describing real-world nuclear procedures, or information about the Metal Gear. Or anime.
I didn't get into science to make nuclear weapons, you know. I became a scientist because I wanted to make robots like the ones in the Japanese animes.
The anti-nuke message is presented through cutscenes very well, but more subtly through gameplay. Metal Gear Solid is a stealth game, and it can be quite difficult at times. Combat is almost always discouraged against. You might get a large arsenal of gear to use, but those are more suited for boss battles. During gameplay, you'll be studying enemy routes and looking for openings to sneak past them. It honestly gives me more of a rush than constant action does, and it's so satisfying to pull off correctly. The enemy AI isn't as smart as it will become later, but at the time the AI must have been pretty impressive. They can react to sound and footprints.
Huh? Whose footprints are these?
And one guy isn't too hard to deal with, but if they gang up on you, you're screwed. And that's because your own combat skills are pretty limited. No first-person aiming, just barely an auto-aim and some basic physical combat. Not so much to work with combat-wise, but you get plenty of options for stealth. As I mentioned, however, you'll encounter the members of Foxhound and you'll have to take them out. These boss battles may not be as expertly crafted as they are later in the series, save for maybe 1 or 2 in this game, but they are all truly memorable. I think the clunky combat makes each battle a bit more intense. Not so much to where it feels impossible, but enough to where beating them feels satisfying. And part of that comes from each member of Foxhound being extremely memorable characters. Revolver Ocelot being a cocky, expert gunslinger.
You're pretty good.
Sniper Wolf being a sniper who likes toying with Snake.
Catch you later, handsome.
Vulcan Raven being a shaman with a minigun.
Ravens and snakes are not the best of friends.
All great boss battles, but most would agree that Psycho Mantis' boss fight is the best one, or at least the most memorable one.
You have not said often. You are somewhat reckless.
He makes your controller vibrate, reads your memory card, and you beat him by plugging your controller into the second controller port so he can't read your inputs.
Plug your controller into controller port 2. If you do that, he won't be able to read your mind.
A boss like this has never been done, and still probably hasn't been done since this game. Physically getting up to play with controller ports is such a Kojima thing to do. Unless you're playing it on the PlayStation 3, whoops. In 1998, this must have been so creepy, but for a seasoned Metal Gear vet like me, it's nothing special.
You like Castlevania, don't you?
What the fuck? The fourth wall breaks are plentiful in this game, actually. Characters will reference buttons on the controller plenty of times. Mei Ling's job is to literally save your game. Hell, you find Meryl's codec number on the back of the CD case.
It should be on the back of the CD case.
That's so... Oh, Google my old friend. So, Metal Gear Solid is great, but there's no doubt that it does appear dated since it was a PS1 game. So, Silicon Knights, creators of Eternal Darkness, created a remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 using Metal Gear Solid 2's engine exclusively for the GameCube. It's called Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes. Is it better? Kinda? It looks better, and Solid 2's superior gameplay completely breaks this game. But they got all the actors to come back to re-record their lines, and their delivery is good, but a little less genuine than the original.
It's Snake. I'm in front of the disposal facility.
Excellent, Snake. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
It's Snake. I'm in front of the disposal facility.
Excellent, Snake. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
Bear with it. It's designed to prevent hypothermia. This is Alaska, you know.
Bear with it. It's designed to prevent hypothermia. This is Alaska, you know.
Oh, sorry. I haven't introduced you two yet. This is Mei Ling.
Oh, sorry. I haven't introduced you two yet. This is Mei Ling.
Nice to meet you, Snake. It's an honor to speak to a living legend like yourself.
Nice to meet you, Snake. It's an honor to speak to a living legend like yourself.
Not to mention how over the top the cutscenes are. The original was a little more subtle than this to fit its overall themes, I think.
Oh, sorry. I forgot. Damn! Oh, sorry. I forgot. Damn!
The biggest offense is that they remade the soundtrack, and it's just not as good. Just listen. Yeah, the original Metal Gear Solid is better. Not to say Twin Snakes is bad, but good luck getting a copy in 2021, woof. So, need I say how Metal Gear Solid turned out? How many sequels are there? Yeah, okay, it did well. After Metal Gear Solid 5, the 7th or 8th game in the series, Hideo Kojima left Konami, of his own free will, I swear, and went on to found Kojima Productions to make Death Stranding, which has a lot of Metal Gear's DNA in it. Whatever happened to Metal Gear? Pain. With how many games there are and the fact that Kojima has moved on, I don't mind the series being over. Maybe a sequel to the Metal Gear Rising spinoff would be cool, or maybe a remake of the 2 original MSX games. But really, none of that is needed. The Metal Gear series is perfect as is, and if Star Wars is anything to go off of, you gotta know when to stop. Regardless, Metal Gear Solid is a fantastic game, and every time I play it, I forget that it's not my favorite one. Even so, it's definitely one of the greats, but it's like the soundtrack says. VR training. Wait, shit, hang on. Shit, where is it? Ah, the best is yet to come. Maybe I should re-record that.
Snake! What was she fighting for? What am I fighting for? What are you fighting for?
If we make it through this, I'll tell you.
Okay.